Hello, everybody, and welcome. Happy Thursday evening. Thank you for spending some time with us here on Facebook or YouTube, wherever you find yourself watching this webinar. This is our 8th and final webinar in our series that we have kind of put together to support practices and eye care businesses across Canada and the US with COVID. This was sort of the culmination webinar in knowing that either we have reopened or you are either really, really close to reopening. This webinar is all about reopening with success, having a launch plan, building a sustainable sort of safeguard for the future, and as the title says, never looking back. I am very excited to be joined with 3 esteemed panelists. If you don't know who I am, my name is Kevin Wilhelm, and I am the president and co-founder of Marketing for ECPs. We are a full-service digital marketing agency servicing the eye care industry. My panelists today, we have Dr. Kent Preet, we have Dr. Wes McCann, and Dr. Kyla Hunter. Hey, everybody, how are you guys today?
Excellent.
Yeah, good, thanks.
Good. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you guys to just introduce yourself, and I'm going to throw a question out as an icebreaker, sort of I like to call it building isolationships. And so, Kyla, I'm going to start with you. If you can introduce yourself and your practice and just a little bit about you, and then I would love to know the story behind that wall behind you.
Okay, so I'm Dr. Kyla Hunter. I practice in Grand Prairie in Northern Alberta in Canada. My business has been operating for 7 years. We were a cold start and we are now up to 6 doctors, so we've grown super quickly. I don't really have a story behind my wall. I was bored one day in my office, so I taped it off and painted it because I wanted it to be more colorful. So.
Well, I think that says a lot about who you are. So thank you. I love that. As soon as you logged in today, I was like, that's the greatest wall ever. And it's a very creative space. Let's go with Dr. Kent Preet. If you could talk about yourself. And I'd like to know one thing you've added to your routine since COVID in a positive way that you're not going back.
Sounds good. Dr. Kent Preet graduated from Waterloo in 1997, originally from a small town in Saskatchewan, now working in Calgary. I became a partner in the practice that I originally was an associate for a couple of years, and Calgary Optometry Center itself has been around for about 40 years now. And one thing that's different about my COVID experience is I'm learning Hungarian. My girlfriend is Hungarian, and sometimes she says things under her breath that I need to know a better understanding of what she's saying.
That'll do it. My wife comes from Serbia, and not only is it her, but it's her family. And so you have to understand a few of those words to know, what they're saying about you, right? So right. I completely agree with that. And Dr. Wes McCann, if you can introduce yourself, and I'd like to know, have you picked up any cooking, is there anything in the great recipe that you've been able to cook up in the last couple months that just kind of, you never would have had this not happened?
So my name is Wes McCann. I graduated in 2012 from Fort Lauderdale Nova Southeastern University, and own 5 practices now in Southwestern Ontario. Practice out of 2 of them primarily in downtown London and Arva, just a suburb of London. Been recipe over the break, I would say we tried cooking a little more Indian food, which was awesome. We love pretty much anything that is Indian, Thai, Asian flavors are great.
I love it. I also tried cooking Indian food, and then I ended up buying Indian food. So that was my experience with that. So that's awesome. Good for you. Let's go over the agenda today. So we've already done the first one, the introduction icebreakers. We're going to talk about the current situation that we find ourselves in today. I know there are a lot of these kind of relaunch webinars, and we're going to talk about what we're facing today. And then really, I'm going to turn it over to you 3. I think people want to hear from you. Specifically, we're going to talk practice management, HR, the technology utilizing, and just sort of how to build a safeguard for the future and building sustainable success. So how do we launch successfully? And then what do we need to do to put in safeguards? Because, we sort of have a blueprint now for how this can go down, and COVID isn't going anywhere, and the next thing may be around the corner, and so the government sort of has a blueprint. So what are we going to do to make sure that doesn't happen? And then we're going to open up to question and answers from everybody that's watching live. So if you'd like, just please throw in your questions into the Facebook comments or the YouTube. I see them on the screen, and if it is topical and we can get to it right away, fantastic. If not, we will just push it to the end of the conversation. We will save some time. So please direct your questions through there. So let's move forward and let's talk about what we've seen. So across North America, we are seeing practices starting to reopen, but slowly. I know that where I am in Calgary, we were told, hey, we're opening, and the night before everything kind of just didn't. And we know Ontario has yet to open, but in the United States, we've seen almost every state has opened. We're also seeing patients at about a 50% capacity is kind of across the board of what we're seeing, kind of a new normal. We know that patients are eager to book in and see you, but they are very cautious right now with the safety protocols, and everybody is handling this a little bit differently. We have the people that are totally fine and comfortable walking in, even off the street, if they could. And there's people that, may take a little while to come back. And so we are seeing that across the board. And it doesn't just apply to patients, it applies to staff. And, we're seeing that in all industries, but specifically when you are dealing this close with people. And so we're going to talk about some best ways to bring staff back. And PPE, it's a new facet of the business we just haven't had to account for before. I don't know about you, but I know so many people that didn't know what that acronym stood for before, and now it's ingrained pretty heavily into our life. So is this sort of what you guys are seeing so far in terms of just kind of reopening? Is there anything you guys would like to add at this point?
I think what you said pretty much covers a lot of it. Certainly, staff, the more you're engaged with them right now, and the more that you're having discussions and open dialogue with them, the less nervous they are about coming back. They want to know the unknowns and really participate in some of the decision-making process as to how things are going to run, because they'll have feedback that we won't have thought about because we're not out at the front desk every day. So listening to them and making sure you're having that open dialogue, I think really helps, but certainly I've noticed that.
Cool. And I do want to take a second. I would like to also acknowledge our sponsor for tonight. J&J Vision has been a huge benefit to this series. We really collaborated in putting together the content and sort of our speaker lineup. And so I'd just like to say a big thank you to them. We are going to have a guest appearance at the end, just sort of speaking on J&J's behalf, but thank you to them. When we look at what we've seen digitally, and this is sort of where I can bring some of our experience in, this is what we've seen for searches specifically for eye exams. So steady, January, February, March, even year over year, very steady. But right around mid-March, we saw a pretty drastic decrease in terms of people looking for eye exam specifically. And I think for obvious reasons, that wasn't on the top of mind. What we saw a massive spike in was schools. Parents were very worried about schools and online schooling and what's happening with school systems. And so you just sort of see that massive spike. But in our industry, eye exams fell, but you can also see it's recovered. And especially the last 2 weeks, we've seen the bounce back. And by all indications, it's looking like we will have the same amount of demand online, people searching across the board. And this graph sort of represents both the United States and Canada. When we look at telemedicine, this is where we have seen a dramatic spike. And when we look at opportunities moving forward and what the new normal is, even 150% week over week was what we were experiencing in terms of searches for people that need medical support, but they're looking online and specifically in telemedicine. So this is not a surprise, I don't think, to anybody, but just a big spike. But we all are also seeing it decrease. And the big spike, it will come down and normalize. When we look specifically at products, contact lenses, it's remained stable. And when we look at different product suites and revenue opportunities in your business, contact lenses have remained very steady across the board. When we looked at this and compared year over year, it was almost identical. And so what that's sort of saying to us is contact lens demand and people searching for this is sort of, I guess, pandemic proof in a sense of it's one that's been very steady. And eyeglasses, you can see here, did see sort of a dip, and again, it is picking up as well. Looking at these stats, panelists, is there anything that's surprising or stands out to you guys, and any comments on that?
I was going to talk about it a little bit later on, and I'll still get into it a little bit later on, but I think the observation that I have out of all that, which was very interesting to me, was that contact lenses stayed the same. And a little bit later on, I'm going to get into a conversation about what would you have done 6 months ago, knowing what has transpired today. And I think that that's a key point to take away from those statistics, is that I think some of our contact lens patients are the stream of revenue, the stream of patient interactions that we have the best ability to be able to remain continuous with. And I think that there's different ideas about how to even do that better that I think are worthy of exploring.
Yeah, well put.
Speaking to that point of what would you have done 6 months ago, I would even push that back to what would I have done a year, 2 year and a half ago. And that would have been collecting more email addresses from patients and being much more proactive about making sure I have everyone's email addresses, or at least a cell phone number that you can communicate with them during a time like this.
Yeah.
Did any of you put in telemedicine? Was that something that you implemented before, during, or will after? Where does that sort of fit into your plans? Kyla?
Yeah, so we did some OD to OMD telemedicine prior to COVID. And then one of the very first things we did after we got shut down was kind of implement our own patient to OD in-office telemedicine protocol. Unfortunately, in Alberta, we can't bill for it. So we had to kind of figure out how that was going to work. But that's something that especially now with our decreased ability to see the same number of patients in the clinic every day, a lot of those emergency appointments can still be dealt with via telemedicine. So right now it's tricky because we can't bill the government for it. So we have to bill the patient, but that's something that would be nice to see continue in future.
Kent, have you done much telemedicine while we were off?
I'm in Alberta as well, so it's the exact same thing. The billing is tricky. So you do have the platforms to be able to set up, to be able to do telemedicine. And I do think that there's going to be a new demand. One of my big takeaways from this entire experience is to be able to really be present and understand what it is that patients are wanting right now. And what patients wanting right now is not the same as what they were wanting 4 months ago. So there's a new awareness around safety protocols. There's a new awareness around accessibility. And those are things that now when we talk about value-added propositions, how do you set yourself apart? It's creating that new experience that makes people feel as comfortable as possible. So that's what I'm trying to do, is to try to build into our system, whether it's through telemedicine or making sure that we have all the emails and communications in place through social media and our website and our email blast, to really make sure that communication is explaining to people that there is a new experience that they can expect coming in, and that it hopefully matches up and even exceeds what they were expecting this new order to be.
And we're in Ontario, and we also we don't have any codes for telemedicine either. And we have been dabbling a little bit into the charging for telemedicine privately. So there's different platforms that exist that are out there. Doxy.me is a popular one that's been used. And we used another online engine form generator that we could send out to patients, and on that form it's our consent form as well as a payment option, so they can complete that. We use Stripe to collect the payment, and then it comes to us, and then we can do the telemedicine interaction after that. So it's been quite successful, and patients are quite willing to pay privately for it as well, because they don't want to come into the clinic, and B, perhaps it wasn't necessary for them to come in. So moving forward, we're looking a lot at telemedicine as an additional option, even without our codes. to manage patients remotely, whether that's your subconch heme or your chalazion or internal external hordeolum. Allergic conjunctivitis is really big right now, especially with spring around the corner. So those things I think we can certainly appropriately manage via telemedicine, and I think it's going to be a great asset to have on our website moving forward for sure.
Yeah, we had no problem with people charging. I think of the whole kind of 5 weeks we did it, only one person refused to pay. Same thing. They're happy to not have to come in and still get it dealt with. And they're used to the government not paying for things, even though they're paying for everything right now. Right. So it hasn't been a problem really at all.
Joel is just asking, Wes, what your online form do you use? What online form do you use?
So there's two good ones that are out there that I've explored, Cognito forms and Intake Q. So just make sure that they're PIPEDA compliant, and that I would subscribe to the version where you can collect payment, because that's been very beneficial for us. And when you create the form, sometimes they'll have a link that's not really familiar to your clinic. So you can use another program online called Rebrandly. And if you use that, it can create a new form link. So ours would be forms.centraloptometry.com/ whatever the form is that we have. So you can rebrand them so that the domain looks much like your own website domain, so that patients don't look at it as a foreign link. So there's some good options that are definitely out there that we've found have been quite successful. Speaking of telemedicine, we're also looking at, in Ontario specifically, the college regulations are that you can't do contact lens teaches in the next while once we do open. So I contacted the college myself and inquired about if we were to do the fit in office, the initial fit in office in our exam lane, would it be appropriate to do that and set up a telemedicine teach or insertion and removal? And they said, and I said, our requirements for that would be as long as it's during working hours, so that if the patient had a complication or they couldn't get the lens out, they could come to the office while one of the ODs is there and have some assistance for removal, or if there was an abrasion or a scratch or anything like that, someone was available. So those processes are in place. But as long as you pre-screen the patients that you think are acceptable to fit, then they said they saw no reason why that wouldn't be okay. With the contact lens teaches, the biggest concern they have is the close proximity of the teach or your optometric assistant or optician or whoever you have to the patient for an extended period of time. And if you're doing that through telemedicine, they said that would be quite acceptable. So that's what we're looking into for contact lens teaches over the next little while.
In Alberta, it's different. We are allowed to do contact lens teaches here. So we have not been given that same sort of commentary. We're just supposed to do it without contact. So the no contact lens fitting. So you can still be in the same room. You can still basically do a mirroring technique. And that would be very similar to being able to do it over telemedicine. So I do agree that that platform might be something that is a way for you to be able to continue moving forward, because I do think that having more and more contact lens patients moving forward from a business perspective makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
So I think there are ways around, that, and telemedicine is certainly one of them.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for those. As we move forward, I think it's important to look at just trying to stay ahead of what's ahead of us, the changing landscape. So when we look at what's happening, there's three sort of stages in this crisis management. There's responding, rebuilding, and recovering. So in the respond phase, what's happening, businesses responding and adapting to fluctuations. And we will know there's going to be fluctuations in consumer demand. And so what can you do? We have to solve what matters today in the business. And that's just topical and matters right now in terms of seeing the most high value patients today as well, and really sort of sorting out and prioritizing that. When you look at the rebuild phase, businesses have they've taken time to look at every aspect of their business. So I've talked to so many business owners inside and out of eye care. And what I hear constantly is, I have this time now to just rip apart my business and look at every process and look at all these things. And so for you, approach your business like never before and keep patients top of mind with every decision you make. We've talked about creating a brand and really standing out and differentiating yourself. What a great time to sort of do that and come out of this. And out of this is interesting because this is here to stay. It's sort of a new normal. It's what that looks like, but utilizing this opportunity to reinvent yourself a little bit and really focusing in on the patient experience. Then of course, recovering. So businesses are reframing their models and their unique value proposition. So what can you do is implement learning and new strategies into your business practices. We're hearing from you guys, the no contact lens fit and telemedicine and e-commerce and setting up e-commerce stores. We have friends that do e-commerce and Get Sightly is one of them. And we did a webinar with them, and I think that they had so many leads come in those first 2 weeks from people that are just quickly adapting to e-commerce, and contact lenses, one, drops or other things. You can get to spectacles as well. And so these are just sort of ways to stay ahead of that changing landscape. What we know across all industries. So this is sort of interesting, but this came directly from a conversation with Google, and they sent me this report, which was totally just opened my mind. And we know now that consumers are on devices like they've never been. That's a huge opportunity for eye care professionals to educate about digital eye strain. But we also know that they're consuming 60% more content than they've ever have when you add in Netflix and Amazon video, when you add in reading all the articles and just YouTube. We're up to 12 hours a day we are consuming content. Like, just think about how crazy that is. I know Instagram and social media alone is up 40%, but overall content consumption is up 60%. We know that they're searching for specific critical information to meet essential needs. And so when you look at telemedicine, it's increased over 150% week over week in the beginning. When we look at people still want to develop new connections and nurture their existing relationships. Half of our population has done, in March, did an online video meeting. We don't know what it was in April, but you can guess it's skyrocketed even more than that. What's interesting to me is the 54% increase in with me videos. I didn't even know this was a thing. This would be somebody going to YouTube and typing in study with me. And they put a video up of someone studying, and they put it on their computer, and they're reading, and just because they needed a human connection. And there's going on a walk with me, and there's cooking with me, and there's just a video of somebody doing an activity. And so it shows that craving, that human connection. And we know that people want to still build a connection in a world where we're limited. You see the happiest videos of people standing on a porch and giving a birthday present or just connecting somehow. And I'm guessing I'd be interested to know the feedback you guys are getting when you're opening and seeing patients for the first time. What is that? Is it similar? Is it fear, or is it the happiest place in the world, which is the arrival terminal at the airport? If you just sit in an arrival terminal at an airport, it's the happiest you'll ever see anybody. Kyla, what did you see when you first opened up? What has been the reaction?
Yeah, it's a good thing that we have lengthened our appointments, because everybody just wants to talk. And multiple people, especially the patients that we've seen over, the past number of years, they'll come in and sit down, and before you even start with anything that has to do with eyes, they're just having a conversation about anything. And a lot of people will stop themselves and be like, oh, it just feels so good to talk to somebody. So it's definitely where we are. There's not a ton of fear up here. It's a community that hasn't been overly hit with COVID. And so people are just so happy to be out and with other people in general. And the exam room is no exception.
That's great.
I think one of the things that makes for a great eye care provider is being able to understand that the message that you're delivering has to be delivered in multiple different ways. So yeah, that would be my experience mostly, Kyla, as well, is that most people are just excited to be out, have someone to talk to, have some sort of interaction, and are very grateful for the fact that you might be able to help them out because they broke their glasses, they're running out of contact lenses, or they have a problem that they didn't think was going to be able to be solved during this crisis. But I've had the other as well, where people were literally in tears because they were so anxious and scared to be in the office. And for them, it's a completely different approach. Then it's about reassurance and helping them understand that it's okay to feel that way, that it's okay to have concerns, and that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that we're helping them. We have our front door locked so that people can't just walk in. Everybody gets screened before they come into our office. We are very obviously taking all different protocols than what they would have experienced before. So for some people, it's completely different. Some people do have a lot of anxiety about it, and they're all going to be different.
Just an idea, and some of this is just a brainstorming conversation, is Ken, you are a very, I guess, calming presence just in general, and I would say most eye care professionals have that skill set. You convey trust. Most companies are just sending out an email with a policy. This is what we do. Boom, 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 boom. Like, our doors are locked and everything you said. Everyone watching, and for you guys, a suggestion might be a video. Is filming yourself saying exactly that in that confident voice, and just saying, these are the protocols we're putting in to ensure your safety, and this is what you're going to expect when you walk in, and you will see this and this and this. And then when somebody calls to book an appointment, you can put it on your website and social media, send them a link to the video where they can watch it and feel more confident. So they don't have to wait to see you to feel that way. They feel that before they're even going. So just an idea to throw out there.
I think that's a great idea. Every one of those types of connections you can make is building another relationship. One of my colleagues out in Vancouver put together a video of a bunch of ODs that are kind of in a group of like-minded friends, and I think Wes, you were in it as well. And it was just basically to send out to other ODs saying, hey, we know we're in some challenging times, but we're going to get through this. Be present, focus on what matters. Those kind of positive comments that will allow people to understand that, yeah, things are changing, but we can still think our way through this by really diving into what matters most, which is helping each other.
Tom Wilk from Mountain View Optometry did a great video walkthrough of his office with his policies and everything, and he just shot it on his iPhone and put it together with iMovie. So you can do it at low cost and make it look really professional. And it is much more personal and easier to sit through than reading a whole policy document.
That's great. We will we'll find the video and put a link in the comments on Facebook. So for anybody watching now live or watching this back later, I think that you can find that video that you're referring to. One thing we're also seeing is they're building routines around technology and the internet, and telecommuting. Obviously, online workouts saw a huge spike. I think I don't know if you guys are big into the home online workouts, but one thing that I've noticed is meditation as well. So 51% more searches for meditation videos. People are looking to be, for reassurance in just a very outside of the box world that we live in right now. So anything, part of the reason we post these things is I think people are looking at ways to communicate and just understanding the psyche of what patients and consumers and just people are going through. Sort of helps frame how you sort of approach, your patients and the market as well. Just a question, any of you guys meditate? Is that something that you guys have done and found success in during this time?
I do Headspace with my brooder mask on at night.
Okay, there you go.
I golf with
there you go,
which is a form of meditation, especially if you're the only one out there because it's 5 degrees and raining. So you're alone, your thoughts and your golf club. It's very, very Om-like experience.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I yoga. I don't meditate. I can't sit still, but I can be quiet when I do yoga. So
very cool.
And I think is the opposite of yoga.
Yeah. So now let's look at the impact on your business. And so we know there's new challenges. We know you're reassessing priorities, and it's time to pivot and adapt products and services. How does this resonate with you three in terms of have you guys reassessed your priorities? Have you guys adapted and taken this time to say, okay, I have to approach this a little bit differently?
Absolutely. I would say we've changed really the foundation of all sorts of parts of our business. We've changed how we communicate with patients. We've changed how patients enter and exit the practice. We're doing a virtual waiting room now, so that when a patient arrives, they text us through, we use Weave as our VoIP system. So they text us through Weave, pops up on our desktop, lets us know that they're in their car or outside. We text them back, and then when they're allowed to come in, and then walk them through the pre-test and then to an exam lane. Within our exam lane, we have a stainless steel tray within our exam lane where anything that's touched by the patient goes on that stainless steel tray for disinfection later. We've had to purchase like those plexiglass shields, slit lamp shields, all those things we have in our office now. We've changed our optical to full white glove service. So we're looking at what does the patient want, and also what makes the least amount of touch points in that practice. So within our optical, like again, the patient is handed anything off the optical wall. Instead of grabbing frames themselves, we have red trays that are where all their frames are collected that have been touched and get disinfected later. But we're also, when a patient's purchasing a frame, we're going to pre-adjust their frame prior to sending it to the lab, and we're going to do direct home delivery if they want. So again, things like that are decreasing touch points or decreasing visits to the practice, which is going to make a lot of patients much more comfortable. So those things are all changing. And then again, email communications, text message communications, all of that has amplified since before COVID, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're finding, like with the white glove service for frame selection, it's actually going so much faster because people aren't allowed to just wander. So our frame selection is so much faster and everyone's getting something that fits. There's no time talking people out of the wrong frame or something that's not right for their prescription. So yeah, that's been a really interesting kind of spin-off. And then the other thing that we've been talking about, just like an impact on business or future changes, is just getting online. How do we get online in a way that still protects our core business? Because there's been so much shifting to online purchasing, especially over this past COVID epidemic. And that's going to keep waving, like ebbing and flowing. And so we want to make sure that we're ahead of that, but that's not something we've had a really good plan for at this point in time.
When Joel had a good question about how are you managing the increased cost of care, PPE, cleaning supplies, etc. I think it's so important that everybody looks at the increased costs that you're going to be incurring post-COVID and increase your fees to compensate. The provincial fees, I don't think you can count on increasing to compensate. So you're going to have to utilize your other fees, whether you're in a province that allows you to balance bill, or if you're not in a province that allows you to balance bill, increasing your diagnostics, like retinal camera, OCT, visual field, private pay exams, contact lens fittings, things like that, and figure out what proportion of all those patients go through so that you're kind of divvying out that cost amongst all your patients. But I think you absolutely need to look at reviewing your fee structure to compensate for the increased cost, because it's not only the cost of the PPE that's going up and your cleaning supplies, your staff costing will likely go up because you're spreading your patients out more. If you've increased your hours, like we've gone from roughly 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 with one late day and half a day on Saturday to basically 7 to 7:30 every day of the week, with the exception Friday's a little bit earlier and Saturday's been expanded to almost a full day. So we've had to increase our hours, which means our staff are spread out more. And so we've had to hire another staff person or two to compensate for that. But again, do your cost analysis and do your cash flow planning and make sure that you're staying neutral, at least coming out of COVID, with your increased costs. Yeah,
there's going to be changes to both your fixed and your variable costs. You know, to answer the question of do we think that PPE is here to stay? Yes, I think it's here for a very long time. And I don't see a time where it's probably going to go back exactly the way it was before. I think that there might be some measures that are relaxed over time, but it's a new fixed cost. It's part of doing business now, and you need to build it into your planning. And as far as your variable costs, yeah, if you're spreading patients out, expanding hours, expanding staffing, just like echoing what Wes said, there's a cost associated with doing that. And the only way to stay viable is to be able to make sure that you're still running your business as a business and understand what those costs are. And that goes back to Kevin's point at the very beginning, which is prioritizing the patients that are going to be good streams of revenue and income. It doesn't mean that you turn away other people that aren't. It just means that you create time in your schedule by booking intelligently to make sure that if you have people that need glasses right now, contact lenses right now, that they're not being turned away for people that have routine care that could be pushed a little bit further down the line. So you have to be very intelligent to making sure that you have very conscious effort to have revenue generating examinations each and every day.
I also, oh, sorry, Kevin, cutting you off.
No, go ahead.
I think part of that is kind of pre-positioning your patients to expect to come in and purchase as well. And so we've kind of changed our wording with like when we do our recall reminders for patients, because we always do phone calls for that, just asking them to bring their glasses, asking if anything's changed, kind of giving a little bit of a preset that if they're coming in, they need something and then they're going to buy. And so they're coming in ready to purchase. And it's, I mean, we're almost to the end of our third week of being reopened again now. And our like dollar per patient, revenue per patient has been like crazy high for the last little bit.
And you got to think this is an advantage to us because people don't want to have a bunch of touch points. They don't want to go to the mall. They don't want to go to other places. They might still go online. So I think that there's a shift in who our competition really is within our communities. And if you look at it as, hey, we have the ability here to make sure that we're keeping you safe and getting you everything you need at a great value, then I think that there's an advantage for us because they're already there and they will want to get it all done at once. It's just like people no longer are going shopping at the grocery store 2-3 times a week. They're going maybe once every 7 to 10 days now, and they're trying to make those touch points less. So this is a way for us to be able to communicate that we do have the ability to meet that demand.
And make sure you've got your brand and your patient experience down pat, because if you're going to be capturing new patients that you haven't captured before because they want to decrease their touch points, you want to keep those patients. So you want to make sure you've got your brand and your entire patient experience down to a T so that you can impress them and they'll want to come back and buy from you again.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, cut you off again.
Go for it.
We even, like, we went through all our lens pricing as well, just to make sure that we had something that competes with every different price point that people could find in town. And then we did it on a mat. So at every single dispensing desk, there's a mat that has all of the different pricing options so that patients know that they have the ability to not just purchase what the doctor's recommended, but there are other pricing options available too. And I don't know if that's decreasing the walk out the door or if it's a combination of everything, but I think it helps open up that conversation.
But it does go to that one-stop shopping kind of experience that you're trying to create, is that there are a lot of people that because of unemployment now and economic anxiety, they're not probably going to want to, for some of them, have the same sort of cash flow expenditure for a purchase of spectacles. So they need to know that there are other options within your office. And I think having that menu, having those options, and then more importantly, having your staff trained to be able to have that conversation about the menu of options so that everybody feels like there is an option there for them is so important right now.
Yes,
absolutely.
Somebody asked up there if we were limiting the number of frames each person could try it, and we haven't. We've said no more than 10 on the desk at a time, but if those first 10 don't work, we bring them to the back to get sanitized and go for more.
But to your point earlier, if you let the optician, your dispenser, make the selections, it isn't 40 frames anymore. No. They'll get it with 8 or 10 frames because they know what they're doing.
Yeah, there's the odd patient that's really picky that they have to go back for a second look, but almost every time within that first 10 frames that they pick, someone's got something out of that.
To Wes's,
you guys being open already, that's all very positive, it sounds.
Yeah.
And to your point, Wes, when you said you have to look at raising fees to compensate, I can tell you that I received an email from my dentist 2 days ago that explained just that. And they said, listen, for the amount of our costs are remaining the same, for our standard of care, we are not compromising that. We are still offering the same service you're used to. But because of that and only seeing so many patients, we have to raise fees above the set fees by the province. And so if you have any questions, let us know. But they preemptively sent that out. And they did it in a way that was it just made sense, right? And so you understand, and everyone's going to kind of be in that same boat. What I'd like to know from you guys right now, and maybe it's more Kyla and Kent on this one, but what has been the biggest surprise or / challenge so far with opening? So Wes is saying, hey, it's very positive. That's great news. More money per patient, and people are still happy to see you. But what's something that we should kind of be aware of that was a surprise or a challenge?
So I think for me, the biggest surprise has been people's actually willingness to spend. I thought we were going to be seeing people and having them walk out the door, and so that's been a nice surprise. The biggest challenge has actually been patients. A lot of them haven't had that social interaction for a long time, and I've had so many people cry in my chair over the past 3 weeks because of a divorce or somebody died, or they just want somebody to talk to. And so that's been a really unexpected challenging. It's been really emotionally draining in an already really emotionally draining time to be that kind of counselor person for patients that in a just total different level than it usually is. So again, it's good. We've stretched out our appointment times. So we're about 50% longer appointments than what we used to book. And we definitely need that both for cleaning as well as just the ability to talk to people, whether it's positive or negative.
Yeah, I would echo those comments that the biggest surprise for me was how raw everybody's emotions are right now, how everybody really just wants to connect. Biggest challenge was actually in quelling some of the anxieties of my staff about how are we going to do this. You know, a lot of them wanted to make sure that we were still able to deliver the standard of care that we had before. They knew how busy we were before. How are we going to still be able to do this with all the extra work that was there? Some of them have concerns about their own safety. So staff onboarding, bringing them back, having a meeting, letting them know what to expect when they're coming back. I laid off 10 of my staff and then had to bring them back about a month, 6 weeks after. And they had some concerns, and we had to have a lot of communication with them to make sure that they were feeling heard and protected.
Great. And so Kyla's going to talk a little bit about staff and what she's done with hers. I'd like to stay with you here and sort of turn to practice management, kind of just overview. And, you know, you've kind of put three bullet points on here. Do you mind just sort of giving us a little bit of overview as to some tips that you have in terms of practice management?
Sure. I'm going to start off by giving a shout out to Tanya, who said hello from the class of 1997. I may or may not have missed a couple of classes, and without her notes, I probably wouldn't have graduated. Well, not probably, definitely wouldn't have graduated. So, hey, Tanya. So hindsight is 2020. Wes and I were discussing that 6 months ago, a year ago, a year and a half ago. If you knew this was happening right now, what would you have done? So Kyla, what would you have done? Maybe one thing that you would have done a little bit different if you had known this was coming.
Yeah, I would have set up our online contact lens ordering, or the ability to online contact lens order 6 months, a year, 2 years ago even, so that we had all our patients already in there and they had just a really easy way to just go and reorder instead of us having to field phone calls and know that we've lost a bunch of them to the internet.
And Wes?
So one of our offices we've been piloting Get Site Leave for about a year now, but I would have started all 5 practices on it a year ago now if I was able to as well, because the uptake we've had from that has been huge. And we're lucky enough as well that we have been trying to collect email addresses for a bunch of the offices. We've been more successful at some than others, but we were able to mine our patient database through our EMR and mass upload all of our patients when we did start the store. So we had one weekend, we had about 20 new onboards within the one weekend. So I would have started that a lot earlier for sure. And I wish I had started online forms earlier as well, because we've been doing urgent care and it has been great. And the number of patients that have said how great it is to be able to fill that out prior to getting here was amazing too. So I think our brand has always been being a big patient-focused, patient experience practice, but also a big technology-driven practice. And patients really do appreciate that. So that's something I would have done a long time ago as well.
And a reason why I think this question is so good is because there's no guarantees moving forward that this isn't going to happen again or when we're going to come out of it. So my thinking behind this is if you had things that you wish you had done, well, now's the time to do them, because maybe you do have the time to do them. I know now that I'm back in Alberta, I almost wish that I'd had one more week of kind of downtime to get prepared on some of these things, because there's a lot. Once you get back into it, you're going to be busy again in different ways, but I think that there's an opportunity for us to build for the next phase. What is the next phase? And of course, we don't know, but you can kind of look back and say, okay, knowing what I know now, what would I have done? Maybe it's a subscription model. Maybe you get more contact lens fits. Maybe you have a better emphasis on that because you know that contact lenses are a more consistent stream of revenue. Maybe you figure out a way to be able to virtually fit people with their spectacles so that you can continue to do that when somebody runs out of glasses, if they can't come in or if they break their glasses. So all those things that we're thinking, oh, I wish I had had that in place. Now's the time. Now is always the time because all you have is the present. And the only thing you can do is just kind of think moving forward, well, what would we do?
It's funny that you mentioned that. My 3 or 4 page to-do list, I'm almost completed now. That's been growing for the last 4 years from being off for so long. So I think I've been busier now being off than I was when I was actually seeing patients, because I'm finally getting to all the things that I've wanted to implement in the practice.
Mm-hmm. The no contact lens fit, we discussed that already. There's different ways to do it. So I understand that in Ontario that they've said that they want to put restrictions on that for the time being. Obstacles are just obstacles. There's ways through them, there's ways over them, there's ways around them. And if that's the challenge that you have in Ontario to try to figure out a new way, I think that, I know that J&J has a AccuView library video on how to do a contact lens insertion, that if you can precede your patients with those prior to doing a remote fitting, I think there's definitely the ability to continue to do that. And like I said, I think the more contact lens patients you have, it gives them another opportunity rather than just relying on glasses. We want to give them multiple streams of vision correction options so that should one fail, another one is there. That redundancy of being able to provide different options, I think, is important moving forward. And if it's just a simple mirroring technique or being able to create space in your office to have a little bit more room in your contact lens area to be able to manage the social distancing requirements, those are things you need to think about, because I do think it's important to be able to continue to grow and to continue to move forward. And you can only really do that with your new contact lens fits. So that's important as well. My comment about the new flow is that there are choke points within the office where things bog down. It might be the front desk, it might be pre-test. One of the new choke points is in disinfection and sanitization. So I think it's important in each of your offices to have the entire team on board with this, but also maybe put one of your staff members in charge of making sure that that is their role, to make sure that everybody has it down to a science on how we're going to disinfect. We're doing it in front of the patients, making signs visible I have one up on my wall here. It just says that we're, what does that one say? We're wiping out any risk. This equipment is sanitized before and after each use, to make sure that everybody is comfortable with how things are progressing as far as sanitization and disinfection. So there's a new patient flow, and it's going to take you a little while to see where your choke points are. But like Wes said, maybe you have to hire a new pre-tester / disinfection person to come into the office, and then that has to be built into your cost of doing business. So you have to take a look at all of that.
We're doing something similar to you. I mean, we haven't started it yet, obviously, but we've role played it with the staff once. And we're going to do another kind of rough run through once, but we've designated an overall lead person for an early shift and a late shift as to who's in charge of all the cleaning procedures. But then we have area leads as well. So we have like a front desk / waiting room / front door lead. And then we have the technician lead, which would be pre-test and exam rooms. And then the optician's lead, which would be the optical. So each of those leads are responsible for there's 2 shifts for 2 different staff members, but they are the responsible ones for their own respective area. And then one person oversees everybody for the day. So again, similar ideas and checklists in each area. So we have a pre-test checklist that's posted on the wall. We have an exam room checklist posted within a cupboard, front desk checklist, all those things that the staff are going to initial every day, and then it's going to go into a binder at the end of the day, just so we have that in place. And it's really important for you to have things like that. Also contact tracing or a log book of patients coming in and out, because say you do have a staff member that does become sick, or a patient that was positive through your clinic, if you have great documentation of your cleanliness and your cleaning procedures and your sanitation procedures, and your staff, like we have a staff declaration of health. So when every time a staff member comes in, there's a QR code in the staff room. They have to scan with their phone, and they answer questions on their own declaration of health for every shift. So again, all these things are in place and logged so that if a staff member or an outsider patient gets sick, we can say these were in place, and we have less of a chance of getting shut down for 2 weeks to detox. So the more checks and balances you have in place like that, the better off you're going to be should something happen.
Yeah, we already had a health and safety coordinator within our office that happens to be one of our associate doctors, and she's done a fantastic job of setting up all those checklists. So I agree, make it somebody's role. Make it so that, yeah, you're in charge of making the checklist, and then of course you're going to coordinate and look over them and give them any support that they need. But you don't have to do this all yourself. If you have a team, treat it as a team. People want to be involved. They want to know how they can help. And I think this is a great opportunity to be able to get everybody involved in that.
Absolutely. Wes, would you mind kind of diving into the technology and sort of future-proofing? And
yeah,
you said this is a great time to like sort of implement things that you've been wanting to. So can you speak about that specifically?
Absolutely. So you've had a lot of time to kind of prep things, and you still, if you're in Ontario, may have another week and a half, hopefully no more than that, to prep. But look at doing some sort of an online intake form. So we have a new patient online intake form, and we also have a returning patient update form. So the update form would also be trying to gather their email if we don't have it already, their insurance information that they tend to forget at home, health card information, updating medications, even their chief complaint. All that can be gathered in those patient intake forms rather, and update forms. We also have a telehealth consent form that we've created. We have our TELUS Health consent for direct billing form that's been put online as well. And there's one more form that I'm forgetting. So all of those are created now that are all in email templates that go out to a patient. So that's a great tool to be able to get, and it's a one less touch point with clipboards and pens at the front desk, and it also doesn't take your staff as much time because you're assigning the patient to complete this prior to coming. So I would highly encourage anybody to start on that. If you haven't already, like I said, Intake Queue and Cognito forms are two that you can look at, but I've been very happy with the way ours look. In terms of patient communication, something I neglected prior to COVID and a long time ago is I actually had a patient that came up to me and said, why don't you ever send out like marketing emails? Like, why don't you ever market to me? And I said, well, we just haven't gotten to that point yet where we have been able to market to you via email. And she's like, if I knew you had a sale going on, or you have a sunglass sale in the summer, or you have a contact lens sale or anything like that, I would come in and purchase from you. Or you have a 2-pair sale. Like, I want to know that those are going on. So you should consider marketing to me. And again, it went on my to-do list and I finally got it done. So we've signed up with MailChimp to be able to send out emails. I know 4ECPs also does something similar. So there's all these different platforms you can use to market to your patients. And this is the time, especially when you're going to have less patients coming through the practice potentially, and things have changed. You want to be able to market to your patients really well. So look at those different avenues that you can market to them. Also e-commerce. If you haven't embraced e-commerce, absolutely now is the time to embrace e-commerce. Like I said, we've been with Get Sightly for about a year, and patients have loved it. So it's neat because you can enter in the patient after they've come in for their visit. They get an invite and they register. If there's a point system in it too, so when your patients purchase from you, they get points, kind of like Shoppers Optimum points, that they can apply towards their next purchase if you want to turn that feature on. It also calculates if you're a daily disposable patient. If you wear your lenses 3 days a week or 2 days a week on average, when should you be out of those lenses again to prompt you to order again? So there's some really neat technology in some of the e-commerce that's available now. So I would definitely recommend looking into that. And I know they're looking at expanding that portfolio even to the optical portion. So Fitbox is a pretty neat e-commerce option that you can virtually try on frames and see what they look like. So again, with wanting to decrease touch points within the practice, if a patient could virtually try on all the frames that are in your gallery prior to coming in and selecting 3 or 4 that they want in a tray when they arrive at your office, then that's a huge convenience point for your patient, and it's a neat technology option. So those are all neat things that are coming down the road, and it's embracing the good things about e-commerce and online shopping while not taking away from the value that you add in the office in terms of fit and selection and technology, etc. So I think you can marry the two really well by embracing something like an e-commerce platform. And again, direct patient delivery. With contacts, it's a great option, direct patient delivery, and a lot of patients love that option. So definitely explaining to your patients that you have that option. Again, in our e-commerce store, we're also doing direct patient delivery for consumables. So I run a bit of a dry eye practice as well, and within our dry eye practice, we have a lot of consumables. So omega-3s and different artificial tears, breather mask, etc. So being able to offer that within your online store and offer direct patient delivery is great. And there's some great partnerships with some of the dry eye companies as well for that direct to patient delivery. Like I said, also with spectacles, we're pre-adjusting spectacles prior to sending it to the lab and then direct shipping them to the patient if they want that option. So again, decreasing touch points in the practice, increasing value because it's a much greater convenience for the patient. And then again, you're increasing the value and your image to your patient. So it's a great, even better patient consumer experience. So all those things are really excellent things to look at or to buy into, especially now when you have a little bit more time, if you haven't already started.
Yeah, and not to underestimate, that a lot of these manufacturers came to the table and they did the direct to patient delivery and they did free shipping and they kind of stepped up and it's a shame to not take advantage of that. And especially when you look at, contact lenses, you have mentioned, has been stable. That revenue has been there, not to abandon that, especially when you see the searches every month are always flat and yet everything else is fluctuating. As this happens again, to build up sort of those systems to allow contact delivery and allow the drops and allow those sort of things to build up almost recession-proof or pandemic-proof revenue streams. I think that's important.
Yeah, definitely pandemic-resistant is what I would say.
Yeah, resistant.
There's certain parts of your practice that are pandemic-resistant, and certainly contact lens, dry eye therapy, all those things are more resistant.
I have to say, I've been very impressed by all of the industry partners and suppliers that have really stepped up to the plate during this COVID shutdown, and how much they have been there to assist, not just by producing, saying buy this much and you're going to get this much free, but offering us products, offering us services, offering us things that will help us through this transition. I have to say, I've been really impressed.
Yeah, a lot of people have stepped up, and it's been nice to see. Kyla, can you talk about the HR side? You say you've grown quickly. You have a lot of staff. We have 3 slides here, and let's first talk about just recalling them back in.
Yeah. I realized you wanted 3 bullet points, and I sent you 3 slides.
No. There was a clear difference when we looked at what was sent by everyone. It's totally fine. So recalling staff for sure has been the most stressful part of opening or reopening for us anyways. We had the whole gamut of people who couldn't come back because they're homeschooling their kids and they can't find anyone to take care of them. Staff that were scared to come back to work either because they themselves have a health issue or someone that they live with has a health issue. Or we had a couple that they didn't really want to come back because they didn't want it to mess up their CERB payments. And so that really caused issues for us emotionally. It was stressful too, kind of figure out who still belonged on our team and who didn't belong on our team. And then how to kind of address some of the real concerns that were present with our staff. And so it's caused us to just kind of relook at everything. We have some staff that are doing a little bit of job sharing, or some that are homeschooling their kids have offered to come in for
the under $1,000 a month so that we're still able to get some work out of them. They feel part of the team. They're back in some capacity with everybody else, but they're doing it either on an evening or a day that they have a spouse home, so that they're able to still fulfill their duties as a parent as well.
Great.
Yeah, and then really to combat the people that were scared, it was coming up with a good reopening kind of template. And so we took the Alberta College guidelines and made sure that we answered every single one of those as to how we were dealing with that within our office. And we sent that all to the staff with their recall letter. And so they knew what they were coming into, and they could be sure that they were going to be safe when they were coming back. And then I think Kent had mentioned it earlier, just having a welcome back meeting. So we kind of stagger started. So not everybody started all at the same time. But we got everybody together and did a welcome meeting where we role played the new dispensing procedure. We role played sanitization. We went through all of the new procedures to everybody. We explained why we were doing things the way that we were doing them, so that everyone felt really confident in their ability to be safe at work and then provide safe care to our patients. And then our experience at Stagger Staff, for all those people who haven't opened yet, the Stagger Staff Start was a really great way to go. It let us kind of get our feet wet initially. We had about 4 staff back at the very beginning when we were doing just kind of expanded emergent care in our practice. And that we learned that gloves really don't work because people put on gloves and then all of a sudden thought they were safe and touched everything, keyboards. It was ridiculous. So we got rid of gloves after about the first day. So much easier to do that with 4 people instead of 25. And then we just kind of slowly, this is actually our first week that we've seen a full 3 doctors a day worth of patients. We started with 1 and then we did 2. And then this week we did 3. And so we ramped up our staff along with that. So even though we had all of our staff in for the welcome back meeting, we've had kind of just little groups come in and start at a time. So it wasn't everybody feeling like nobody knew what they were doing. They were able to just kind of get their feet wet. And then when the next group started, they had a number of people that were already there that were comfortable with the new processes and procedures that were in place.
I can't emphasize, Kyle, how important that is to be patient and breathe and realize that you'll get back and things will be okay, and just take it in phases. Just don't eat the elephant all at once. Just do what you can and learn and adapt and continue to grow as you move forward. We phased out and we're going to phase back in to whatever our new phases are. And you're going to learn and you're going to make some mistakes and then learn from them as you go. But just be really present, be really aware in what you're doing.
Yeah. And I think that helped us feel like we were more in control of what was happening too. And so then we knew what was going on. We were relaxed, our staff were relaxed and confident. And then that helped our patients be relaxed and confident in the environment as well.
So Kyle and Kent, did you guys have any issues in terms of, I know you had mentioned with childcare and people not wanting to come back because they wanted to still get served. Did you guys run into any of those issues, and how did you mitigate that if you did?
Yeah, all of the above. So
I had to fire my daughter. You know, she wasn't, I'm not kidding. So she was taking some online courses and she was only going to be with us through the summer, but I had to find a new summer student because she had decided that she was going to go in a different direction. So absolutely, you're going to have people that have childcare issues, people at home that are immune compromised that they're concerned about. And those are probably the 2 biggest ones. I didn't have any of the CERB people, but I've heard from peers that there's quite a few that are that way. So
what I've spoken to an employment lawyer just prepping for this, just in case, but those 2 that you had mentioned with the immune compromised at home and the childcare, that's certainly a protected thing that you can't really do much about. Mm-hmm. But those that don't want to come back because of CERB, because they still want to collect CERB, they would become ineligible for CERB because there's work available for them. So they would therefore be quitting if they didn't want to come back, which maybe you guys would had to have dealt with or not. But that's an interesting situation to run into. The other one that I'm curious about is, and I've spoken to our MPP's office about it because I can't get through to EI ever still, but is when we do go back and say a staff member does get sick, they have to be quarantined for 14 days. How does that work? Can they go, like, some places offer some sick days, paid sick days. We offer some, but certainly not 2 weeks worth of sick days. When I spoke to the MPP's office, they had said that they would qualify, or they would apply for sickness benefits, short-term sickness benefits through EI, but you have to be able to qualify for EI as well, which means you have to work 600 hours in the last however many weeks, which nobody would have. So it'll be interesting to see if something's going to come out from the government to help with that, because I don't think there's a clear answer on that right now. And I don't know if you guys have the same regulations. I'm sure you do, that if you're off sick, like if someone gets sick, you have to be off.
2 points. I think that they're going to waive that 600 hours in the last few months stipulation, because they realize that everybody's in the same boat and there's lots of people that were laid off. So I think that's going to be waived. Secondly, we had our own healthcare plan where we have short-term disability for everyone. So our model, if that happens, and it happened not because of COVID, but for a different situation, where somebody had an upper respiratory issue, was that they just stay home for their 14 days and go on short-term disability.
Yeah, and that's where the same short-term disability is going to be the way that we deal with that as well. One of the other things that I wanted to mention, just with how we're dealing with staff, because the staff who are home with their kids, or the ones who are immunocompromised or have a reason to not come back to work, you still have to protect their job. And so we have hired some summer students. We've hired some optometry students for the summer to come up and work, because they're going to learn fast. They can do most things in the office, and they'll kind of then allow us to hold those spots for when our staff are able to come back later. And
there is a new government's summer student program that will pay for your summer students as well.
We looked into it, and they said it was
not eligible. No, that one's not eligible, but there's another one that's eligible that we've applied for, that has to do with biotechnology.
That's the one.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
So we've applied for the biotechnology one. We were approved. They just have to get some signatures from the school.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just answer kind of one of the other questions. That's also how we're dealing with staff who do still want a holiday or vacation time this summer. We're able to give it because we've brought some summer students on to kind of fill in those gaps.
We've educated our staff that flexibility is the new normal here. I don't have a single staff member who has the same schedule as what they had prior to all of this. They're all slightly different to a certain extent. And that's part of the deal now. That's part of being on this team, is to being able to understand that there is going to be a little bit of flexibility as we phase back in. And so far, because we communicated that up front, we haven't had any pushback yet. I don't know how long it's sustainable for, but we have a pretty big team of 28 people. And so far, we've had a good ability to be able to maintain that flexibility, which is key in this time.
I want to just answer a couple questions that are kind of along this HR topic. A few people asked me about that QR code, that what program we're using. We've subscribed to a service called HR Downloads. They are an excellent service in terms of they can give you advice on any sort of HR topic, which is excellent. And so you have a counselor or a person you can call into. They will give you HR advice. They have templates for your back to work, your laying off, all that sort of thing. They have already pre-done templates, and you just upload your logo and it completes it for you. And they have a lot of resources there as well. So they have an employee portal that employees can sign into, and we just assign them all WSIB training, WMIS training rather. Their all those kind of government mandated things you have to do every year are all on there. So you can assign them all that, but then you also have these neat things like for health and safety, for instance, what we were talking about before, in the health and safety kit, you can have a QR code that you scan in there, and then they just check off all the supplies and it submits it for you to HR, to your portal. But that's where we got the QR code idea for the COVID screening. So it's a great option if you want to look into it.
Cool. And Kyle, I loved your point of relaxed leaders create relaxed staff, and then creates relaxed patients. Just as leaders in general, staff are looking to you, and they're looking for calm. they're looking for confidence, and they're looking for you to ultimately protect them and keep them safe. A lot of that is mental as well. And so I love that point. I think it can't really be overlooked. Moving on to the launch plan, I think here, it's important to know that you're going to open at capacity or near capacity, because you're going to have reduced ability, like a 50% capacity, and you're going to have a lot of people that have not had eye exams. They need that. So we want to make sure that lasts as long as possible. It's incredibly important right now to maximize that revenue per patient. It's really optimistic, and it's nice to hear that you're seeing your average revenue per patient skyrocket. A lot of that, there is a need. I think having that white glove service, having the appointments set where they're coming in and they know that they're going to be buying, it's a buying appointment. I think that will absolutely help. It also maximizes that revenue per minute available that you have, and I think that's important. I think just knowing and being adaptable, that you will have no-shows and you will have unexpected cancels that you haven't had before. That's part of the new norm. And looking at every revenue source with a renewed source of optimism, and saying, okay, if I haven't done e-commerce, if I haven't done telemedicine, if I haven't carried this line, if contact lenses haven't been a big part of my practice before, just being open to all of that, and just sort of going where you see your business going, what patients are looking for. And in any business, this is going to be really important.
As far as the no-shows, Kevin, one key point I wanted to add in there is that was one of the things in our relaunch program meeting that we had with our staff, was to explain to them, now that we're spaced out, how costly a no-show is, and that we need to take every precaution to make sure that doesn't happen, and to let patients know it's okay if you want to defer. It's okay if you want to defer your appointment to another time. We'll still find space for you. But there are people that really do want to be in right now, and we need to make sure that you are going to be able to attend your appointment. So whether that's through text, email, phone calls, whatever it is, it's really important that your staff understand the importance of making sure that your book is as solid as possible, because when you're spaced out like this, every appointment counts.
And not only that, but figuring out a way of telling your patients that being on time is super important too, because with everything being so structured now, if they're behind, it's going to throw off everything else.
Yeah, we've also implemented a pre-booking payment. So if someone has no-showed once within the last 24 months, they have to prepay for their appointment when they book it, because we just can't afford to not have people show up.
Interesting. That's great. Thank you for that point.
Was that received okay by patients?
Yeah, it has been. Because if they show up, they're already paid. They don't lose anything. So it's, instead of a cancellation fee, we're just having them prepay. It's nicer. Yeah.
In talking about your business and just in general, investing right now, I know there is a huge feeling of just preserving profits and cutting and slashing and trying to stay afloat. I think that was the natural reaction across the board with everything from rent to staff to professional services. We saw that cut, those last 2 weeks in March, especially. As April and May have rolled on, and now we know that we're reopening, I think it's important to look at momentum as a real thing, and pulling budgets back from all aspects of your business just slows that momentum down. And so, obviously we're a marketing agency, and the kind of angle that I'll stick at here is regarding to marketing. Now is the time to tell the world that you exist and how you can help them, and why you're amazing at that. And, we opened by saying people are consuming 60% more content than ever before. They're on social media 40% more than they ever have been before. 12 hours a day they are online. What an amazing time to just actually go out and tell the world. And knowing that, a question that I've had lots is, why even spend any money on marketing when I'm going to be booked out months ahead? And it's about ensuring that you are booked out as long as possible. And so you may not have to spend as much as you have before, but cutting completely down. And there's a slide here. This was actually a study that was conducted in the 1980s about the recession, and looking at the increase in market share post the recession, kind of coming out of that. And so when you look at people that invested, kept their spend the same, or overinvested, knowing that competitors and just people in general are pulling back. They're pulling back and they're trying to preserve. And if you are that company that realizes the potential and trying to go out and get a bigger piece of the pie, this is what ends up happening is we actually see an increase of excess voice, which is your market share, perceived market share. And so investing in your business, and it goes everything from product lines to staff to training, absolutely, to marketing and communications. You know, Wes talked about having Weave and talked about patient communication tools. All of those are investments. You said you're bringing in MailChimp, and all of those things are, how do I make my business more sound? And so approaching it as an investing in your business, keep that momentum going. And so whether you're in eye care or any other industry, looking at what is important, what is not, and understanding the financial impact of your decisions long-term more than just the short-term, you know, preservation of profits. When we talk about communicating your open, we've had a few questions about that. You know, 3 simple steps. Number 1 is update everything. It sounds simple, but you know, you don't want to forget to do this. Update your website, your voicemail, signage, even Google My Business. Most businesses have sort of a COVID warning on there. Just forgetting to change that can be detrimental. So just create a checklist of everywhere that someone knows about your business and make sure that you update your new hours, any kind of procedures there. Push out announcements. We talked about an e-blast. Social media is a great place, direct mail, or even outbound calls. If you have staff coming in, having them on the phone and calling and using just using kind of what your safety protocols are and explaining to them the difference is important. And then keeping an eye on your numbers. Recovery is in your control. There's a lot of things right now that are out of our control, but the way your business recovers and responds is in your control. And a lot of that is understanding your numbers, understanding your average patient revenue right now, understanding how many patients you're seeing per day, trying to adapt and trying to just gamify and manage to your numbers will be important, because we may be successful before and it might be harder to hit those same numbers, but understanding them is going to be key. And again, in any business that we're in, understanding your numbers is going to be just critical moving forward.
Kevin, yeah, I was just, when I thought about this whole thing, I was like, this is almost like a cold start with a step up. You know, you have a bit of an advantage because you have an existing patient base. But if you approach it like it's a cold start, you would think, well, what would you really do? Number 1, you would really train your staff as what your new experience should be. You would get the system in place so that you know exactly what you're doing from all the things that we've discussed this evening. And then number 2, you would create that experience. You would be really present to make sure that you were listening, that you were present, that you had the time and the resources to be able to create that experience. And then you would share it with everyone. You would share it via your marketing, your social media, and you would encourage your patients to be able to share that experience that they've had as well. You would put something in place for them to become your biggest advocates as well. So I look at this as an opportunity to approach it with a whole fresh new experience that you're creating. And if you approach it that way, of course you would watch your numbers, because you would want to know if what you're doing is working.
Yeah, and you know, you asked one of those just amazing questions of what would you have done 6 months ago? And I think what I've heard number 1 across the board is, I wish I had my finances in better shape. I wish I had just a stronger financial stewardship and understanding of the numbers. And I think now is like the time is to really dig in and understand more than ever. We talked about these student hiring programs, grants that are available. I know we've said the word CERB, and for anyone that's not in Canada, it's a Canadian Emergency Relief Fund and payments that we're paying staff. So understanding all of those things, those levers that you can pull, are just really important right now. We're looking at safeguarding for the future. Man, nothing's more important than building that plan for sustainability. And it starts, for me, is just like you said, stand out and differentiate yourself. What are you going to do to demand that people come and see you? And what are you doing to ensure that they come back? Because just like every missed appointment is really valuable, every lost patient right now is it can be detrimental. So understanding to build out and differentiate yourself. Create that long-term communication strategy that conveys the difference. And that's social media. And we have 7 other webinars that we've built. One of them is all about creating social media and a plan for the future. And so build out that long-term communication strategy. Wes, you said, I wish you emailed me about promotions and things. It sounds like that's being added to your long-term communication strategy to say, okay, when we have these promotions, we need to let people know. Everyone's talking about getting emails. That's what we need to do. And now more than ever, think patient first and build your practice around them and not around you. What are people saying? Even sending a survey out and saying, what would you like to see us sort of bring back, moving forward in the new normal, and getting that demand directly from them. I think, if you ever read the book, I think I read it years ago, like Who Moved My Cheese? And it's all about change management. As leaders, building a culture for change and embraces change will be very important, because we now know that change can be instant and it can be completely adverse to what we were used to. And so creating a culture and study change and learn from it, implement it. Hiring practice. It sounds weird, but a tip that I've had and it's worked, because in my business, in marketing, it's dynamic. It has to change. Right when the interview is about to start, move locations. For whatever reason, get up and say, we have to go sit over here. See how they react to change. Just small things can be so big in terms of hiring people that can adapt to change well. Throw them loops, throw them for curveballs in the interview. See how they actually adapt to change in the middle of the meeting, and hire accordingly. And then I said here, financial. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Wes.
We always mention that in our interviews as well. And one thing is common motto in our practice is the only thing consistent in our practice is change. So get used to it.
Yeah, and people will say that they're happy with change, and then when you actually have to go through it, they struggle with it. So kind of weeding that out early is probably important. And then financial stewardship. So this is building a business that can withstand sudden drops of revenue, because we now know it's possible. How much cash on hand do we have to get us through, so we aren't panicking? What are our lease terms? Understanding what our lease looks like, having that relationship with our landlords, with our staff, having this sort of in place. Now that we know it's there, we've kind of talked about crisis management, and I've sat in on crisis management type, CE courses. Now we know it's real, and we've seen this before. So having a manual about what does this look like, how much money do we need in order to have a 2-month break or a 3-month break, I think all of that is really important. Kent?
I think that there's a cost to doing business, and if you can build into your business the cost of marketing, equipment acquisition, staff training, and a contingency fund, those 4 things I think are just cost of doing business, that every month, certain portion, whatever that is that your practice can sustain, goes into those funds, then they're already paid for by the time they happen. We had a contingency fund that covered 3 months worth of fixed costs. We didn't even really have to dip into it too much, but boy, does it let you sleep well at night knowing that it's there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was going to say the exact same thing. Make sure that you have a cash flow analysis done that allows you to have that contingency fund in place. And if you aren't able to obtain that with what your current revenue stream is, then you have to revisit your fee structure and what you're charging for things, because you must be too low if you're not able to create that reserve fund within your practice. And make sure that you are changing your fees every year. Inflation goes up every year, 2 to 3%. You give your staff raises hopefully every year or two. So your costs are going up every year, and you have to compensate that with your fees as well. And we're going to have a fee jump, obviously, across the country, hopefully, due to the increased costs this is incurring on us. But you should be changing your fee structure every year. If not, I heard someone, best piece of advice someone said was every 14 months, because then your patients don't see it annually; they see it every 2 years.
There you go. So thank you guys. That sort of kind of concludes the slide deck. What we are going to do is I'm going to put our 3 panelists just in the background for the moment. We're going to bring them back for a Q&A in about 3 minutes. So I'm just going to say just a temporary goodbye to those 3, and I'm actually going to bring in Ted Lack-Minsing. Sorry if I mispronounced that. Ted, what's the last name?
Pretty close. It's actually Latch-Mansing, but pretty close.
Latch-Mansing, thank you. So Ted is the business director for J&J Vision, and I know he wants to say a few words, and so I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks, Kevin. And I'll keep my remarks brief, but wow, I found this a truly engaging, educational conversation, and I think I wanted to thank Doctors Hunter, Preet, and McCann for just your insight and guidance and frankly, optimism during this period of time. It was really inspiring, and it really shows me how resilient we can be. And it gets me excited about how we'll co-create what this new future looks like within optometry. So really valuable. And as Kevin said, if you found this format and this webinar valuable, know that there are 7 others that we've sponsored that 4ECPs has led, and they're all archived. They're available for you and your staff to review, particularly as you're looking to reopen. What I wanted to do, though, is take this time just to let you know that you can take comfort in Johnson & Johnson and the AccuView brand. We've been guided by our credo and our 4 pillars of support to guide all of our decisions to help support you during this time. Those pillars include prioritizing safety first, supporting your cash flow, continuing our practice and patient support, and finally, advocacy for the profession. As I said, we've been here to support you over the past few difficult months of the lockdown, and we have several new programs that you may not be aware of to help you as you begin to reopen. So I encourage you to please reach out and utilize your J&J sales representative, who'll be more than happy to schedule a video call with you, your staff, your associates, to share what those programs are, as well as what those new tools are. Some of the smaller tools include patient communication tools, new educational tools around contact lens insertion removal. But we also have some bigger programs to help support your cash flow during this period of time. So please reach out to them. And I guess my last thought to leave you with is, as you try to figure out how do you balance the future with short-term reduced patient flow with your revenue goals, don't forget about the value of contact lenses. It serves as an opportunity to build your basket, but also it serves as a sustainable, long-term, resilient revenue stream now and for the future. I wish you all success as you reopen. Thanks for watching. Good evening.
Thanks, Ted. And I'd just like to thank you as well. You and your team's support has been amazing during this. And like I said, it has really been a true partnership in coming up with the content and being able to kind of just help, just get the word out there. So thank you for your support. All right, well, I'm going to say goodbye to Ted and bring back our 3 panelists again. I am going to just talk briefly before we get to the Q&A. So if you have any questions, please type them into your comment bar and we will get to them. To round out, I will say Marketing for ECPs is doing complimentary website audits. So if you are sitting at home and you're wondering, okay, we got to do this a little bit differently, and you're wondering how effective your website is, our team will conduct a full analysis and audit on your website, and happy to walk you through it. And so you just go to our website and you can fill out the form and we'll do that. AccuView has the AccuView library with a ton of great resources. Here we can show that there are some for COVID recovery. There are just great videos and posts that you can use. So definitely utilize that. We also have digital relaunch campaigns that we've built. So we have 11 campaigns right now on our website. They have social posts, we have LinkedIn posts, e-blasts, as well as videos. And so you find the brand that sort of fits with you, download it for free, and we are happy that for you to use on all of your platforms. And lastly, something we've been working on during this time is a new solution. It's called Instagram Wallpaper. And essentially what it is, for those that value social media but just don't have the time or resources just to dedicate to creating a great Instagram feed, we've done the work for you. So we have 8 collections or 8 wallpapers that fit into these 3 collections. Some of them are for family, so 2 family focused, 2 fashion, and 3 medical. The medical is 1 for dry eye and 1 for vision therapy. So basically it's a subscription service. You subscribe and we auto-populate your Instagram feed with pre-designed amazing content that all just looks really good. So if you're interested in any of that, please go to our website at marketingforecps.com and fill that out. Let's move on to the Q&A portion as we wrap up. Has there been any questions that you guys have seen that you'd like to address? I know early on we had Tanya asked about the biotech program for students. Wes, can you share that or perhaps put a link to that, or do you know more about that?
Through my email to try to see if I can find it again. I'll keep working on that through this, but I remember I originally applied for the regular student grant program, and they directed me to this one. So worst case, but I'll keep looking for that.
I would have to ask my controller because she did it for me.
Okay. What about staff holidays this summer? So, Kyle, I know you mentioned, bringing in summer students and allowing them a time off. Just in general, what are your philosophies on allowing holidays for this summer?
Yeah, we're pretty flexible too, and that's the new normal. We don't have our schedule built out for staff more than about a week in advance right now, and so even though we had a bunch of people pre-book holidays for the summer, we've just asked everybody to come to our HR person and let her know if they want the holiday still, if they don't, and then we'll get back to them as to whether it's going to work. And then if they don't need a specific time, if there's a backup time. I mean, we know that this time was really stressful. I need a vacation. I know that my staff was home, but it wasn't really a vacation. So we don't want to not allow them to have holidays, but they understand that it has to work within the practice and what works for the practice. So far we've been able to kind of fit in everything that needs to be fit in. Well, hopefully that continues.
Okay, great. My point about all that is our staff are the ones that, that make a huge difference in our businesses, and we're no different. And knowing that they're going through a hard time as well, because a lot of this, as we felt as business owners, it's out of our control. Still, a lot of things are in our control. We're the ones making a lot of decisions. For them, this has truly been out of their control, and they're just kind of along for the ride. And so trying to keep a normal for them, allowing them to take those holidays, allowing them to take vacation with family. Family is important. And then also just mental health days is also just really important right now. So I think just keeping staff in mind, as long as it's not detrimental to business, I love hearing that all of you guys are offering that flexibility. Yeah.
I just sent you that link for the BioTalent.
Perfect. So I will post it here in the comments. I had a lot of questions about the dentist letter. And so rather than just email it out, what I will do is actually create a template, and you can just go and download it. So I'll probably put it into like a Word document, and we'll change it. Instead of being a dentist, we'll have it for eye care. And it'll be up tomorrow. Anybody can go to our COVID resource page. They can download it, input their information, and they'll be able to use it yourself. So I'll put that up, and then I'll put a link into the comments tomorrow directing you, and just as a reminder, so you can watch out for that. As I've seen no other questions being added, I guess what I'd like to do is just finish out with just a final comment from each of you, just how you're feeling, and any just kind of words of advice for our audience today. So let's go ladies first.
Okay, there were two other quick questions that I'd seen come through that.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So, I'll just stress them really quickly. One was how we're taking prepayment. And so we're doing that two ways. One, where others taking credit card over the phone, or we are doing e-transfers. We really got on the email payment bandwagon during this whole COVID thing, because that's how we did most of our telemedicine, and it's worked really well. And then the other question was whether we tell patients the cost of the appointment before they arrive, and absolutely we do. We cannot afford for somebody to not proceed with their exam because they're not expecting the fee. So it's part of the script that our staff goes through when they book the appointment. So I think that's all I got.
Yeah, I think awareness is the people need to know when they come in. I think, don't surprise them. Nobody wants a surprise right now. We've had enough surprises over the last 2 months. Any other just, final pieces of advice or comments to your peers? Yeah,
just general comment, I guess. Just look forward to the change. This is not a normal time, but I think it's actually a really exciting opportunity to really dig deep and see what excites you about your business, and change the things that don't excite you about your business. So change it's a good thing, and we're all forced into it right now. So now that the craziness is over and we're on kind of the new normal, I think it's kind of exciting. So I hope everyone is along for that ride.
Thank you. Wes, how about you?
So I would just say embrace the change that's happening, because I think a lot of the stuff that we're going to see come out of this is certainly going to be different. And I think there's going to be a lot that we're going to embrace and want to keep as well. So I think it's given us a time to kind of reset and revamp our practices to where we wanted to go on our to-do list, and embrace a lot of the things that I think are going to be very valuable to our practices moving forward. And certainly there will be a few things we'll be happy to see go in a year or so, and things maybe start to change again. But I think it's going to take a while to get there for sure. But embrace the change, and really spend a lot of time getting your staff involved in decision-making processes, and also in coaching and practicing the change, because they will have great feedback that you're going to want to certainly listen to, because they see a side of the practice you don't necessarily always see. So certainly talk to them, have regular meetings. I would encourage everyone to do a weekly meeting if you can fit that somehow into your schedule, because you'll get feedback from your staff every week on things that are good or not so good, and things that you should change or tweak even just a little bit. So really work closely with your staff, and they're going to be huge assets moving forward.
Love it. Thank you. Kent?
I'm an athlete, and I've always really been into athletics. And in every race, game, event that you see, there's a moment where there's a separation, and that's crunch time. And there's some people that are able to seize that moment and be able to take advantage of it, and there's others that shrink away from it. And they're all world-class athletes, but some understand when crunch time is. And right now is one of those times for us. And for those that see this as a huge opportunity, like Kyla and Wes were saying, to be able to revamp your practice, really focus on what matters, now is an opportunity for separation. Now is an opportunity to rise above and to be able to create something that you probably didn't even think was possible for you, if you want to see it that way. And it's a choice on whether you want to see it as a problem or whether you want to see it as an opportunity. And I think people is where that all starts. So get your staff on board, share with them your vision of what you want to see come from this, and then put in the work and be able to listen, like Wes said, to the feedback that you're getting from your staff. Really value your team, because you're not going to be able to do it all by yourself. But if you have a vision in mind and you hold on to that and you realize that it's crunch time right now, then I think there's a huge opportunity for you to move forward.
Fantastic. And for mine, my parting words, and I've said this to a few people, but when in our life do we get to work on really, really big problems? As business owners, and for a lot of people, successful business owners, your problems are typically small. And I look at this like, what an opportunity to really test, yourself, test the team, test what you're kind of made of. And I think what comes out of this is unity and really resolve and understanding who we are. And I think just carry that in. We've experienced really tough times, and I've been inspired by a lot of change that I've seen, and the positive attitude, and from both my team and the three of you and many other business owners that I talk to. So thank you guys for joining us today. Thank you to everybody who's watched. Thank you to everyone who's watched these 8 webinars. And I also appreciate all of, putting up with all the emails that you've been getting about this, because it takes a lot of emails to advertise all this. So those are done now, and you can breathe easy on those. Thank you guys very much. And to everybody, have a fantastic evening.
All right. Thank you. Bye, Denise. Bye, Tanya. Bye, Kyla. Bye, Wes.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.